When we began planning this in February or so, we thought that the results of the American election would be quite different. But when we finalized it, we did think that the Sanders campaign was interesting. And, we defined it as taking a few rough edges off the Democratic Party. But happily, we said lessons of a campaign and what now? So I think that part remains relevant, as does the Sanders campaign. So, but in the situation where the election went in a rather different direction, I think comments more generally are also appropriate. We have two speakers here. Arun Gupta lives in Portland.
New York.
You live in New York. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I've been giving so much misinformation that I think, aside from the fact that you're attractive, good-looking young man.
Not as young as I used to be.
And working on, used to be Indie Media. Is that still?
I co-founded The Independent and the Occupied Wall Street Journal, Lannan Foundation writing fellow, currently contribute to Washington Post, Guardian, Nation, Telesur in these times, Progressive, and numerous other outlets.
Okay, a smart and enlightened gentleman. Sid Shniad lives in Vancouver, originally from the United States. Refugee, and way ahead of the curve, apparently, and a retired trade union researcher, bureaucrat. Anyway, both of them follow American events intensely, and they're going to talk about what the hell is going on. In particular, something that many people had hoped for, despite the fact that it was taking place within the Democratic Party, and the fact that the S word, we were talking about the F word earlier, but the S word was mentioned in mainstream American politics for the first time in many, many years, probably since Norman Thomas. So, who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
I thought you were leading.
I'll follow you.
Okay. Jacobin magazine recently ran an article entitled "The Popular Populist." The subhead said, "Bernie Sanders is the most liked politician in the U.S. What does that mean for the future of left politics there?" So what was the basis of that popularity? Sanders was four popular things: aggressive financial regulation, a much higher minimum wage, expansion of Social Security, free college education. He was against unpopular things: unfair wealth distribution, and the fact that the wealthy pay too little taxes, the size, power, and influence of major corporations. Sanders advocated wealth redistribution. He didn't belittle government. He didn't promote the virtues of small business. He didn't shy away from promoting people's rights to entitlements. He spoke out against the 1% and promised benefits for everyone else. In other words, instead of using the discredited, mealy-mouthed Democratic Party approach designed not to alienate corporate contributors, he built his campaign around what Americans hate and embracing what Americans like. In doing all this, Sanders established a vocabulary and a program for social democratic politics in America. Nothing prevented that vocabulary and that program from being adopted by millions of Americans who flocked to his campaign. That's the synopsis of Jacobin's article on Sanders. While huge numbers of white Midwesterners in states like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania who voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012 and who seemed to still approve of him, they voted for Trump in 2016. From this, it appears that a considerable number of voters, particularly victims of neoliberal globalization, have been signaling their desire for progressive economic change for some time now. Voting for Obama was the way to do that, or they saw that as the way to do that in 2008 and 2012, but voting for Trump was the way to do it in 2016. In other words, while there was increasing indications that the new Trump government includes a number of hard rightists and outright racists, it can't be said that the U.S. electorate has embraced a hard right agenda. So the task for progressives here in Canada, in the States and beyond, is to determine how to promote progressive politics. In this context, I would reinforce Arun's comments which I understood were to take place before mine, that some of the initiatives made by progressives at local and regional governments in the States are of direct relevance to us here in Canada. A bit of background on this. I've been asked by author-activist Steve Early to review his new book, Refinery Town, Big Oil, Big Money, and the Remaking of an American City. It's the story of a grassroots coalition that succeeded in taking over the municipal government of Richmond, California, a government long dominated by the Chevron oil company, which runs a huge refinery in Richmond. As I read the galley proofs of Early's book, I was struck by two things: how much the folks of Richmond have achieved by way of real community control based on grassroots activism, and how directly relevant their experience is for us here in Vancouver. Parenthetically, when I mentioned Vancouver's battle against Kinder Morgan and its plans to expand its existing pipeline to haul bitumen produced in Alberta to the coast for shipping in tanker ships, to Steve Early, he explained that they've been facing Kinder Morgan in Richmond, California, for years. In order to follow the approach used in Richmond, we'd need to pull together several strands of activism in the Vancouver area, including those who've been working against Kinder Morgan, as well as those involved in housing, environmental, labor, homeless, LGBT, and other ongoing struggles. Based on the successful approach used by the Richmond Progressive Alliance that Early describes, the priority must be to integrate these various struggles. As many of you well know, recent socialist organizing in Canada has yielded very little. But the more I think about it, and Early's book has helped me think about it, the more I think that we need to stop waiting for Godot and get active in existing struggles, including, maybe especially, at the local level. This is not a shot at lefties. Many of them are already involved in such work. I'm just arguing that working collectively on a variety of locally based struggles, learning from the experience and sharing them locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally could provide concrete opportunities for lefties' political involvement that has tended too often to be dominated by purely theoretical concerns. Such efforts would be valuable in their own right, but they would also provide opportunity to expose non-lefty activists to perspectives that could help them situate their particular experience, rooted in local struggles, in the wider world of actually existing neoliberal, globalized capitalism. This idea seems to be increasingly popular among activists. U.S. Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein recently reported that her organization is exploring the idea of being a membership party where members are expected to support the party with dues so that its candidates can mount more viable campaigns in local races and participate in social movements with substantial organizational and financial resources. Such an organization would have the potential to create the kind of reciprocal relations among those who are struggling at the national, regional, and local levels that we need in a movement that's seriously dedicated to changing the world. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you. When we were talking about what this panel was going to be, I think one of the ideas thrown out there was, I think it was like Sanders' paper, can the rough edges be sanded off the Democratic Party? And that's, I think, a big question still before us. And of course, I know it's a same question in Canada in terms of the NDP. What is like the left, the real left's relation to these establishment parties? And I always go from a definition of the left being anti-capitalist. I think there are other things that go into being on the left, but to me that is really the core issue, is that you are anti-capitalist or the movement is anti-capitalist. Now saying, that asking if the rough edges can be sanded off the Democratic Party, to me, what that sounds like, there's an implicit argument that the Democrats are core sound, and they only need some smoothing out, removing the grotesque protuberances of elites to bring out the beauty of the body politic underneath. Now, I think the problem with this is the narrative is based on the assumption that the Democrats can represent the interests of the working class, of all races, all genders, all nationalities, all status, etc. But there's no evidence of this, and I don't think there's really been evidence of this for well over half a century. Certainly before I was alive, or probably even before anyone in here was even an adult. The Democrats' ruling ideology is essentially they use consensual hegemony, the Gramscian notion that there's one class will lead the other classes for the benefit of everyone. So, and this is not just limited to the Democrats, right? This is the kind of the establishment left and quote parties all over the world, whether in Europe, in Latin America, even with the Bolivarian Revolution, the ANC, Asia. It's that we will be better managers of neoliberal capitalism. We will operate it more efficiently and rationally. Thereby, we will return more tax revenue to be able to dispense in dollops of social aid to the public. And we will also include there will be more modest inclusion in terms of the formal electoral process, right? So the Democrats are very much about wanting to reform voting systems, but it's just really to get out the vote. They're not really trying to increase political engagement. The Democrats also will be more representative, right? They will have a more diverse face, like Hillary Clinton was planning on choosing a cabinet that was going to be half women. And of course, I think we all here know, even though a lot of people fall for it, it's like big deal just because the person who's signing off on the drone strikes wears a pantsuit instead of a business suit doesn't make it any better for those people dying under the bombs. And we can just also look at the trajectory of the Democratic Party since 2008. In 2008, the elites and the base essentially came to the conclusion that this party, which is pro-Wall Street, which is pro-war, was best represented by the face of an African American with a Muslim-sounding name. Now, 8 years later, after Clinton's disastrous campaign, certainly the elites, and I think many of the base of the Democratic Party, have decided that an African American of the Muslim faith is the best face of a pro-war, pro-Wall Street party, that being Keith Ellison, who's being promoted as DNC chair. This doesn't change anything. Neither does it change anything that Sanders and Warren are being basically elevated into the leadership of the Democratic Party. If you need to give, we're good?
You're great.
Okay, so there was a few days ago, there was an article in the New York Times that was just absolutely appalling and stunning. And folks should look it up. It was about how the Democrats may align with Donald Trump. And this was apparently coming from Chuck Schumer, who's now going to be wield a lot of power because the Democrats have 48 seats in the Senate, unless the Republicans go for what's called the nuclear option and completely change the filibuster rules. You only need 41 senators to gum up the works. So as head of even though they're in the minority, with 48 senators, they can gum up the works, just like Republicans did for many years. But this article was about how the Democrats think they can align with Trump on certain issues, especially on infrastructure, on child care tax credits, and that they will get the credit for it. Now, this is just utterly insane because on one level, it just shows incredible political stupidity, and it's of such a stupidity we know that they can't actually believe it. If the Democrats help Trump to to pass a lot of his legislation. Remember, because things that he has said about infrastructure, about not wanting to reform entitlements, go against Republican orthodoxy. It goes against what Paul Ryan wants to do, who the best description of him ever is probably the zombie-eyed granny starver, right? He wants to smash unions, he wants to slash entitlements, he wants to decimate whatever is left of social welfare. But Trump has spoken out against that because he kind of he does represent this white nationalist, right-wing economic populism. That the government should be working on half of real Americans, and real Americans are white Americans. So Chuck Schumer apparently thinks he can work with Trump. Sanders said this initially. Elizabeth Warren also said this in the remarks to the AFL-CIO. A number of unions have, Richard Trumka said this, the head of the AFL-CIO. Now, of course, if they do help him pass any legislation, they're like, oh, the benefits will confer to us because the public will see that, we helped. It says, no, it won't. That's not how the American political system works. All the benefits will confer to Donald Trump. The public doesn't care about some obscure senator or representative. Donald Trump's going to get all the credit, and he will get all this credit. It will, in fact, reify him, make him real as he is this amazing, incredible deal maker and negotiator who can unite parts of both parties. He's completely shaken up the system. This would ensure that he gets reelected. And this is one of the things that I've started saying to people, like, don't be talking about this as this is just for and he's out, right? There's no guarantee that he is going to be out in 4 years. And, he could very well get reelected. Of course, it's early to say that, but I don't think you should make an assumption either way, whether he'll be 4 or 8. So no political benefit will confer to the Democrats. It will only help Trump. So what's really going on? The Democrats can't be that stupid. Well, Chuck Schumer he's from New York State. He doesn't represent New York State. He represents Wall Street. He's the senator of Wall Street. Now, I'll admit that there are times where I thought, and I even wrote, that Trump could really win this thing because I was on the road, watching, going to rallies, talking to his supporters, also realizing, the presidency is about who seizes the historical moment, and Trump did that very successfully. Clinton never ran on anything. That was revealed in the WikiLeaks email, where they were lamenting for over a year that she has no reason, like she can't even give a reason why she's running for president. The only reason she ended up giving was, I'm not Donald Trump, and people are not going to vote for that. But one of the things that I was surprised by, I expected if he was elected, there would be like the stock market would decline like 10 to 20%. And in fact, it shot up, and his economic agenda is in many ways, just warmed over Reaganism. These huge tax cuts. They're going to do a tax holiday, and Politico, which is one of the best sources for kind of the inside political coverage, said that his economic plan is basically the dream of investment bankers. So that's what's really going on with the Democratic Party when they say that we can align with Trump. They're carrying out the part of his agenda that favors Wall Street. And there's also, I think, a war going on within the Democratic Party. Do they go more towards the social democratic wing, or do they just go more towards the Wall Street wing as kind of now represented by Trump? Trump represents the construction capital part of Wall Street, and that's what his policies, his economic policies in terms of infrastructure are really about. They're about constructing various things, about constructing a wall, constructing detention camps, constructing bridges and highways and prisons. And then there's another component that has been labeled brown infrastructure, as in brown shirt. So, policing, deportation forces, and this is something that could potentially work, in terms of how they finance it. There's talk of having this tax holiday so U.S. corporations can repatriate these trillions of dollars worth of capital. The U.S. government will get this temporary and one-time boost of revenue that they then use to fund these programs. But instead of the government funding it, what they're going to do is underwrite bonds being floated by the banks. So basically, it becomes a mass giveaway of helping the wealth accumulation. So it helps the banks, it helps the construction industry, et cetera. It does create these jobs. They'll probably be concentrated in the Midwest, where the infrastructure isn't so great, but where it would confer to him the greatest benefit in terms of shoring up his base and really kind of solidifying this right-wing white nationalist ideology for maybe the next 10, 20 years. So I want to argue that there is no really reform or realignment strategy possible within the Democratic Party. The fact that Sanders and Warren are in the leadership is not a good omen. It's a bad sign. There are people who think that, the Democrats, well, maybe what we need is a Tea Party of the left, and I know that's often been a tempting idea, but what it does is it confuses the left as being the same as the right when they're not. There are no left-wing billionaires like the Koch brothers who are going to throw down all this money. You don't have all these other, like Scaife, Mellons, all the other, the Coors, all these other billionaires who spent billions and billions of dollars since the 1970s building up this massive right-wing infrastructure. There's no one on the left doing that. You don't have this huge left media the way you do have this huge right-wing media. When it comes to the left media, it's pretty much Democracy Now! And then some websites, right, and some publications. You don't have something like Fox News on the left, like constantly pounding the table for social democratic policies, for organized labor, for marginalized oppressed communities, and then there's no real organizational form. There's no real movement the way that the Tea Party was. I covered social movements on both the left and right, and it's just like the Tea Party was not an AstroTurf movement. It was a very real movement. It was kind of this revanchist white romanticism that is now fed into this white nationalism of Trump. But we don't see something like this on the left. Certainly, Occupy Wall Street might have been something like that, but nothing like that currently exists. And I do want to also point that out, that this, I think, is something that's very overlooked, is the fact that, let's go back 5 years, right? Or 6 years now. You had the Arab Spring, you had the Indignados, you had the movement of the squares, you had Occupy Wall Street. All of this was a left-wing delegitimization of the ruling class, of neoliberalism, of elites. Now it's gone all the way to the right. So you have like a Brexit, right-wing counter-reaction in Latin America, Trumpism, the rise of these ethno-nationalist parties all over the world, UKIP in England, National Front in France, certainly Modi in India. I think, in terms of where to look, unions, of course, we do need a really robust, organized labor movement, but I think unions are also really have failed incredibly. Again, I think this goes back to the McCarthy era where they purged the left. Unions don't really have any ideology. They're business unions. It's business unionism, where what they do is they service workers. They provide them with benefits, with a contract grievance process, with insurance, and in return, the workers pay them. It's basically a commodity form of unionism. But I think there is real hope. So if we think, and I'm serious about this, I think we can think of the Democratic Party as a political space. We can think that I don't think we should really engage with. We can think of unions as kind of this social space, right, in terms of the organization and work. And I think it is very important to figure out how to engage with organized labor and with workers. But what I want to suggest is that we think of more broadly a different type of space, cities. What Trump and Trumpism there's a lot of components to it. It's a war against the cities. It's against pluralism, it's against secularism, it's against urbanism, against cosmopolitanism. Where are immigrants located, undocumented and undocumented immigrants? They tend to cluster in cities. Where are religious minorities, especially Muslims and Jews, located? They are clustered in cities. Where historically have the LGBT community gone to? Cities is where, you know, kind of the whole gay identity was born over a century ago. Cities are where women used to traditionally go to find freedom outside of stifling patriarchal social norms. Cities are where unions are located. Cities are where the left is located. Cities are also a concrete space. Nations are, you know, they are imagined communities. They are something that, you know, are ideas. They really don't exist physically the way that cities do. And so I think that there is an actual strategy, and that a lot of people are talking about. I wrote a piece about this, that what we need to do is expand on the notion of sanctuary cities. There are 31 cities in the U.S. since the last decade have declared themselves sanctuary cities. And that means they will not cooperate with the federal government on any sort of like a deportation of undocumented immigrants. So they won't share information. They won't turn over people. And you know, it's not a perfect system. There are some issues with it, but it is a model. And from there, I think we take that and really expand it out and demand and push and force city governments, municipal governments, to say, we will protect undocumented immigrants, we will protect religious minorities, we will protect LGBTQ people, we will protect reproductive rights, we will not roll back laws or policies about sexual assault or harassment. You know, a lot of cities have started to pass legislation dealing with climate change, especially on the West Coast. They can say, we will protect, you know, we will not roll back this legislation, we will protect the right to work. Basically, this broad-based strategy to make cities both a progressive left bastion and to really push back against Trumpism. This does not mean cutting off the rural areas or you know, places outside of the cities, but you have to organize from where your strength is. You know, in Oregon, which I spent a lot of time in, there's this great project called the Rural Organizing Project, where they say precisely that. It's just like, look, there are lots of people who are progressive in rural areas, but they're afraid to speak out because of the militias. And so, you know, you need to go into the rural areas, which is what they do, and organize and talk to people as well. But nonetheless, I think that the cities can really work as a bastion to protect people and also to really show, to exert this base of power apart from the federal government, and where the left could potentially build up power. And we've started to see this. You know, Shama Sawant in Seattle, the socialist city council member, and Richmond, California, what Sid was just talking about, the left basically has the entire city council. Portland, basically, this leftist was just elected to the city council there. And so will take a lot of pressure, will take a lot of force. Cities do tend to be controlled by the real estate developers, particular to each city, because there's so much wealth in land. And it would be a real battle, but I think that, you know, this is the one bright shining hope in what is going to be dark times over the next 4 to 8 years. Thank you.